there, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about Tarkovsky's Solaris, another of my continuing Andrei Tarkovsky season. I'm now more than halfway through the season. I've only really got Andrei Rublev and the Sacrifice to do of his main films. There's also this Deep Rolling Violin, which I'll cover probably after I've done the main one. That was a student film, so it's not an official film, but it's kind of a weird limbo land. So I'm not quite sure what I'll do at the end or what I'll do in one of the weeks. It's a weird one. I've only got it in DVD, so it's not a particularly good copy. So it's not the pristine Blu-rays of the rest of the series. But Solaris, we're going to Solaris. I'm not going to cover the remake, which I quite like. I'm going to cover that eventually down the line, but I'm not going to cover that linked to Solaris, the Tarkovsky version. I think that they're individually about certain other things. Like the Soderbergh version is more about the psychology of meeting a loved one who has died and what your memory is of them. It's more of a psychological. It goes more the Bergman route, where Tarkovsky kind of goes more of the existential route with spirituality, and even though I said the Soderbergh version was the Bergman route, mainly just by going for psychology. It just doesn't look like a Bergman film in any way. I'm just trying to kind of give you a kind of general pointer. Right, this Solaris is I probably give it a hard time in my Tarkovsky appreciation because it's my favourite Tarkovsky is Stalker, and that's his other sci-fi movie. And I much prefer Stalker to Solaris. But Solaris is really good. It's just that I prefer Stalker. It's just like that's more of the stuff I'm really into. Stalker, that just feels more intriguing to me. But Solaris is an excellent film. It's just it was filming made just before I think he hit the kind of what I would say is his peak, which was from Mirror onwards, really. Which Mirror, Stalker, Nostalgia, and Sacrifice, the ones that I always kind of viewed as the strongest ones. I haven't rewatched Sacrifice yet, so we'll see how that comes about. But that was historically how I kind of viewed Tarkovsky's later films. Were much more tied to what I was interested in. As the other films were good, but not quite the full thing yet. So Solaris is a lot stronger than I remember it being. One of the advantages I have, because I can watch in projector, I can actually see it in the big screen and see it, just not on TV, which does help a lot. It really does. It just helps with the atmosphere, and because I only ever saw it on TV before, I never actually saw it on a bigger screen, so that really did not help, because it gains a lot. Because one of the things the film has is a kind of a sense of a man in nature, which, put in a small screen, just looks like a man in rooms being depressed. But you see on a bigger screen, the nature side of the story really comes across a lot more, in the sense of this one at science fiction as something that's not the Buck Rogers style of thing, where it's just like based on Western with rocket ships or something. It's not that. It's about a science fiction movie that looks at science and how it affects mankind, and looks at a scientific scenario and how it affects mankind. Now, the Russians tend to go more depressed than science fiction, which I liked a lot, because I like the more depressing science fiction generally. So it's one of those things that appeals to me about these kind of films, is that they come from countries that have been beaten up for centuries. So when they see the big new frontier, they're not seeing it as something that's pure and is going to deliver wonders. They're seeing it as something that, from past experiences, something human beings will bugger up horribly. And we're too flawed and too insane to not bugger up horribly. That's what they've kind of got. It's something that I think as some science fiction, there's certain science fiction people who writers and directors, who much prefer the optimistic version. Because they're into science fiction because of the science. They think science will elevate mankind and do wonders for mankind, and even if we're flawed, we'll get through it and we'll still do an optimistic thing. And then there's the pessimist who sees, yes, science is something, we are an evolving species and we're always trying to conquer, we're always trying to learn new things. But what we do with it tends to be repulsive. That's much more what Solaris is in. You know, we don't know ourselves very well, we don't know each other very well. We'll fall into tribal camps, and we'll go slowly crazy, and we're not equipped for any of this stuff. That's what Solaris is much more like, and that's why it's wonderful. But it doesn't have the grace notes for me, at least, that Stalker does, because I was just more into Stalker and the ambiguity of it all. Solaris tends to be much more. I think it's a bit more downbeat. Generally, Stalker is downbeat in lots and lots of ways, and it covers a lot of the themes we've just talked about. But there are moments of grace in it, and it's even within the horrors of our own nature, there is moments of grace in Stalker. I don't think you get as much in Solaris. Solaris is an investigation. There's a planet called Solaris that humanity has found, the Russians have found. It's based on a novel, and they go to Solaris, and there's lots of things affecting people. There's lots of waves that affect people, and it makes the things you dream come alive in the ship. Now, before that, before it was just weird waves, like no one could quite work it out, and things were forming on the surface, and no one was quite sure what was going on, and people were seeing things on the surface, and the investigators were saying they were mad, and people back home thought that people were just going mad in space. They couldn't believe what they said they'd seen. And that's the kind of attitude that our central character Chris has, because he talks to an astronaut who was one of the first ones who saw things in Solaris, and he thinks this guy's just mad. And it's like, no, he's really not. You know? So when and you have a whole section early on about at home with him and his father, talking about his mother, and his difficult relationship with his mother, and his difficult relationship with his wife, who's now dead, and the mother. And like, Chris is a psychologist, and he's had difficult relationships with people. He finds it difficult to connect because he's cynical, and he knows the problems of people, and he knows the weaknesses of people, and he knows his own habits that maybe aren't that nice as well. So he's a fairly rounded person who's very flawed. And that's why they're sending him to Solaris. It's like he's a kind of no bullshit thing. He's a realist. He knows what people are. He knows what the situations are. And he's intended to evaluate Solaris to find out what's going on there. Because they're wondering if these scientists who are scientists and astronauts who are pretty much in their own sphere of excellence of their own area, maybe they just start to slowly go mad in space against this mystery. It's like, we'll send a person to evaluate if we should shut it down or not, who actually has an air of reality to him. He can't be bullshitted. Of course, he goes to Solaris and all hell breaks loose, but in a very Russian way, which means all hell breaks loose very slowly. And you have a chance to sense the low level damage that accumulates in a person over time, rather than it being bang bang bang, which we get in an American film. This is much more slow moving damage. And Tarkovsky spends a long time on Earth before he goes to Solaris. And apparently the original script that people objected to, half the film took place on Earth before they got there. It's been cut down quite a bit. But it still feels like the first third of the film is set on Earth. I don't think it actually is the first third, but it feels like the first third when you're watching it. But it starts off with Chris going through the landscapes of his family home and walking and thinking, and as he prepares to go on his mission, he gets visited. So you get a sense of the naturalness of the world and the sense of man within nature is already established. Like, before you get to the artificial world built by man and who are an extension of mankind's psychology and need for mechanisms. You get nature, mankind nature, which is indifferent to man. And then you go to the worlds where man is trying to impose themselves on nature. So you go into the city and driving towards this blast off. You spend a lot of time going through with car shots and voiceover, and you get a sense of man and his own created nature, which has these concrete jungles that are supposedly a sign of civilization, but are actually just trying to impose themselves on nature and all its messiness. So you get all that sense of the world and mankind before you even get to Solaris. So you get a sense of a species that is not quite... It's not quite worked itself out where it is. It thinks it has, but it really hasn't, and it's just a species that's not quite there yet. So when Chris goes to Solaris on the space station, you can already sense his past. It's not the easiest past, and basically once he goes there, we find out that these scientists are just trapped there. One of them is trying to still figure out. He's arrogant. He's played by one of Tarkovsky's favourite actors, who was in Andrei Tarkovsky, Stalker. He's in everything. I'm not even trying to pronounce his name, but you know the face. He's trying to work out a way to do it and increase the radiation, which actually just tends to make things crazier, because every time they seem to send radiation to the planet, it seems to make the dreams more solid. And it's like, okay, how do you deal with your subconscious and if this planet's feeding off your subconscious, and it's basically a technology that's alien to how you perceive the universe, and whatever technology, whatever science it's using is something we can't understand. Like, how do you deal with that? And if mankind's way of dealing with it is to try and be as scientific as possible and just try and barrage it with all the things of God that can hurt it. And that's not really the successful option, because the film is about mankind and nature, and mankind trying to make sense of nature and make sense of themselves within nature, set in a world that's so, for most of the film, is just a space station looking down on this natural phenomenon that they can't quite work out, and a distance from their own planet. And there's only 3 of them there. And one of the other guys committed suicide, and they're trying to investigate what happened there. And these scientists are seeing things, and whether the dream comes true, and they can destroy the dreams using as radiation, but they'll just come back next time you dream, because you can't not sleep. And of course, Chris dreams of his dead wife, who comes back, and he's dealing with his own guilt over her suicide and what he did. But he's also trying to be objective at the same time as he's got all these subjective feelings that are making everything seem much more difficult to understand where to go next with it. And it's about him trying to deal with this person who's developing a growing consciousness, dealing with the consciousnesses of all these other people who have the different theories. So one person seems to have given up and gone slightly crazy. The other one who thinks he's got a scientific way to do it. And you've got Chris in the middle trying to figure it out. But there's no real way to figure it out. It's like, it's trying to impose something on the world that you might not quite understand yourself. So it's all he's really learning is he doesn't know. He really doesn't know. He's angry, and he's got his own issues, and he's probably very withholding to people and very difficult to get into his head, because he's very distant from the world, because of his experience. And just, you've got these different people trying to make sense of this flaw, but especially Chris trying to figure it out. And figuring out basically that what you dream and what you're objectively viewing is based on perspective, and it's all very murky and very weird, and Solaris is something that mankind is just not ready for. It's just not ready for it. They should just abandon it and go back to it when they're ready. But they're not ready for it. And it's... Do they have the intelligence to realise that? Well, the whole idea is, should we abandon it? That's the idea he's sent to figure out. But the idea is, they don't trust what they're saying. They don't trust the things. So they're abandoning it for all the wrong reasons. They're not abandoning it for... Because they're not actually confronting why they're abandoning it. They're trying to make up political reasons why they're abandoning it so they can save face. It's not like they're trying to abandon it for the actual reasons they actually are abandoning it, because they're scared. And basically through the film, Chris has to deal with his sense of guilt with his wife. But it's not done in the way you do an American film where there's some sort of catharsis. This is much more like an open wound that's never really going to heal. It's just going to be a damage that he has to live with. And at the end, it's a case of, did he even go home? Because you think he eventually goes home, and then there's a great shot at the end where he pulled back and realised he's on Solaris. He went down to Solaris, and his memories of the nature that we saw in the beginning has now been transferred, and it's been powered by Solaris as he's in this small spot where we really started the film on. And that's where we really started the film, was basically he was in this that's a no man's land emotionally, and he's still there. And it's very ambiguous. You're not quite sure what you're meant to think about it. I don't think you're really meant to have an intellectual thing. It's almost like this is an expression of the limitation of our knowledge of this kind of phenomena. It's not like trying to say, oh, this is the proper way out of this situation, the way that a mature science fiction film might do it. No, this is like, no, we don't know how to get out of that situation. There's still things about ourselves and about nature we don't know. And we can get trapped in that if we don't know, and we can't see a way out of it. You can get trapped. So it's a really terrific ending, and it's really beautiful because it just shows you man and nature. We don't know how we interact with nature at all. We don't know how we interact with our own intelligence at all. We delude ourselves so often about things in our lives that we can't quite work out. So this film's about that through a science fiction lens. There's a lot of science fiction thing going on, but a lot of it really is a man trying to deal with what he knows, what he doesn't know, and what's implicit in his intelligence that he can't quite find words for. And it's about all of that. I mean, it was touted as the anti-2001, but it's considered a lot of technology. It was a lot of psychology. But it's not actually that much psychology. It does actually share a lot of 2001's positives in the sense of the ambiguity of the nature of man, the ambiguity of the nature of intelligence, the nature of progression, and how much we know and how much we can interpret. And it comes down into, you have to watch the film and make up your own mind what it means. I'm just telling you what I think it means. You can watch the film and have your own interpretation what it means. And if you do, I would like to hear them. But definitely it's a film where you bring a lot yourself. And it is a wonderful film, but I still much prefer the later films. It's like, just aesthetically and the characters, I'm just more into what they're into. Even though I'm a science fiction fan, this one just isn't, to me, as personal to me as Stalker is, as someone I'd go back to again and again all the time. I'll probably watch Stalker double the amount of times I've watched this film, because I'm just more into Stalker. But I hope the video interests you, and I hope it inspires you to go watch the film again, or watch it for the first time, because it is a wonderful film. So, that's me for now. I'll see you soon with another video. Bye.